We're going to go over your Car Builder program. The Car Builder program is going to be used for several different designs of different kinds of cars that we'll take those ideas from those cars and use them towards making our own model dragster. This program has a couple different menus here that we'll be going through. The first is the mechanical design that we'll be going through, and that's all the parts that go on the inside of the car. We're going to start here with the chassis, or the frame of the car. We're looking at some different characteristics here at the top of the screen for your parts. The most important for the chassis is to look at the weight. We're trying to make a fast race car, which means it has to be lightweight. So we can cycle through these different parts here on the right by clicking these arrow buttons, and we're going to pick a lightweight chassis, no back seat. Once we do that, we'll move on to the engine, and the engine has two different characteristics that are most important: the horsepower and where it's mounted. The horsepower tells us how much power the engine is able to produce. The mount tells us where the engine is mounted on the car. We're going to pick an engine, just a random one, but I want to make sure it's in the middle for this demonstration. Once I get the engine I want, we're going to go to the transmission. Transmission doesn't really matter for this car. In real life it would, but not for our simulation here. So I'm just going to pick a transmission that is for the rear. The next is our fuel tank. We can choose the capacity of the fuel tank and where it's mounted. So wherever we mounted the engine, we don't want to mount the fuel tank. So if we do that and we try to go back, it's going to tell us that the parts are incompatible. We've got to move one to a different spot on the car. So we go back to the fuel tank. I need to put that fuel tank in the back of the car because the engine's in the middle. Once I go through that, I'll go on to suspension and steering. We don't need to worry about making the car have a smooth ride, so I'm going to pick all lightweight parts. Tires and brakes. The composition and the weight are probably the two most important. Soft rubber tires are going to grip the ground more, but they're probably going to have more air resistance, whereas hard tires are going to be a little bit better for the kind of car we're making. So we're going to keep it lightweight. We're going to have small tires for the front and the back. We're not worried about making the car slow down easily, so we're going to choose lightweight brakes. Once we do all the inside parts, then we'll move on to the body design. Now let's go into the body design. The body design, you can apply 3 different panels to your car: a front panel, a mid panel, and a rear panel. So you can cycle through these panels. The most important thing with the panels is the actual shape. This stuff down here, the weight for this race car, is not as important as the actual shape. We're trying to make this car pointy on the front and the back. We want it to cut through the air. So we want it to look more like a rocket than a bulldozer. So let's keep that front panel. The mid panel, we have some different options. Some of the panels slope back more than others. So you pick the one that you want to use. And same thing with that rear panel. So let's just put together this. We can go to the paint. Doesn't matter what color you make your car. You don't even have to mess with that if you don't want to. Details, same thing. You don't have to mess with it. It's just how it's going to look. It doesn't change anything else. Once you are done with that, we'll go back and we're going to test our car. We're going to do the wind tunnel first. And the wind tunnel tests how much air hits the front of the car. The higher the number here, the more air is hitting the front of the car. So drag is simply a measure of how much air hits the front of the car. Because the more air hitting the front of the car, the harder it is for the car to move through the air. So we want to make this car real sleek design. So not a really good number there, but we'll use it for our demonstration. Then we'll go to our road test, and we're going to go through this test. It does its own thing. You have to just kind of sit back and let it run the test. It's going to tell us our speed after it runs the test. It'll give us some other information. So let it run the test. It's going to come up with some different information over here on the left side of the screen. And I usually don't worry about what it says because they're just generic comments. They're not really going to give us much information that we really need to complete the project. Let it go through all the steps. If you go back now, it won't give us the information we need. So once it's done, go back, go to report, and go up one screen, and we can see the drag is here and the top speed is here. So if we don't get the numbers that we're looking for, we'll need to go back and go through the mechanical or the body design again and refine those parts. At this point, we'll want to save your project, so we're going to go to Save. Up here, we're going to click this downward looking arrow and pull up a menu. The item we're looking for on this menu is student folders, and since my computer is a little different than the student computers, I don't have anything on here, so you're going to look for student folders on here. I'm going to get to it on my computer. We're going to go to the period that you're in, and we don't want to do what everyone else has done here. We don't want to save just right here because their project probably isn't saved correctly. You want to go to the project you're working on and pick the car that you're working on. Then for file name, put your last name and then click Save.